Welcome everyone to the European School of Theosophy, and we take this opportunity to thank the Blavatsky Trust for their continued support of our work. My name is Ifigenia Kastamoniti and I'm part of the team of the school, and I will be rather brief today because what Erika has to say is much more important. So, a healing circle is taking place once per month, facilitated by Juliet Bates. If you would like to participate or wish to include a name in our healing book, please send an email to eustheosophy@gmail.com. This Sunday lecture is by Erika Georgiades, focusing on Elena Petrovna Blavatsky and Lucifer magazine. Next Sunday's lecture will be by Jose Anacleto, entitled Para-Brahman, Emptiness or Fullness, to be or not to be. Please remember that next Saturday, June the 17th, there will be the last part of the seminar on science, education, and spirituality with Professor P. Krishna. The way today's meeting will be conducted is that your microphones will be muted, as they already are, and you will not be able to unmute yourself. After the lecture, if you would like to ask a question, you can either write it on the chat or use the raise hand icon option. Your microphone will be then unmuted so that you can ask your question. If you need to leave the conference room during the lecture, please do so without announcing it on the chat so as not to disturb the proceedings. Thank you for listening, and now it is my honor to introduce our speaker of today, Erika Georgiades. Of course, you all know Erika. I will only say that she's part of the team of the European School of Theosophy and one of its directors. So, Erika, we're all looking forward to hear about Elena Blavatsky and Lucifer magazine. So, let me pass the word over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, we will be talking about the Lucifer magazine and Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. So let me share my screen with you. Not this one, this one. Give me 1 minute. All right. Can you see it?
Okay.
Yes, okay. So this is the frontispiece made by Joe Massaib to the work we are doing with Lucifer magazine that we will be discussing today. It's a beautiful work, as you can see. He is an artist from Portugal, and we are very grateful for all the work that he has been doing. Today, I will be talking about Elena Petrovna Blavatsky and Lucifer magazine. We will discuss about the Lucifer collection, what it is, and the work we have been doing. We will discuss about the historical context in which Lucifer magazine was founded by Madame Blavatsky, what was happening in her life when she founded the magazine. We will discuss about the structure of Lucifer magazine, how Blavatsky structured it, how she was, presenting her ideas in the magazine. We will discuss about Blavatsky and Mabel Collins and HPB's methodology, which is very, very visible and clear in her work on Lucifer. So this is the Lucifer collection. This is a work that we have started by, I think, towards the end of January of this year. Basically, the idea to do this collection is something that it was already more or less supposed to happen. I had the idea to compile different topics from Lucifer magazine. And then I met Juliet last year, and I was discussing this with her. She became the manager of directing the publications of the European School of Philosophy. And Juliet turned to me and said, Erika, why don't we do the Lucifer collection? I mean, we do the Blavatsky years and the post-Blavatsky years. And then I saw the light. I thought, wow, what a fantastic idea. Yeah, so the abstract idea I had to compile topics on different subjects, different topics from Lucifer came to being after I met Juliet and now you see the Lucifer collection. The Lucifer collection is a compilation of all the material published on Lucifer magazine divided by topics. Now, when we started studying the magazine, because the magazine was founded in 887 and ran until 897, we said, look, this is a very large collection. How can we divide it? How can we structure it? Me and Juliet, we were going many hours discussing about all that. It's not an easy work to do. And then you know, the idea came up that we should divide this collection into the Blavatsky years and the post-Blavatsky years. So the Blavatsky years is basically the years that Blavatsky was running the magazine from its foundation, which was September of 1887 until August of 1891. Then you may ask, well, but Blavatsky passed away in May, so why the Blavatsky years are running until August? Well, they are running until August because May, June, July, and August, they are mainly tributes to Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, tributes and articles dedicated to Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. Members writing from all over the world, tributes to her work. That's why the Blavatsky years of the collection we are organizing run until the August of 1891. Now, this is as you can see, the volumes we have published. So far, we have announced 4 volumes, Poetry, Aphorisms, and Proverbs, which contains all poetry and aphorisms and proverbs published in Lucifer within the Blavatsky years. The last song of the Swan, which is a book with all the editorials. Blavatsky was also publishing fiction in Lucifer magazine. So you have The Blossom on the Fruit by Mabel Collins and The Talking Image of Urur, which is a satire by Franz Hartmann. Towards the end of next week, we will be announcing these 4 new volumes. They're ready. We are Dreams, Visions, and Tales of Wonder, which are all topic-related subject published in Lucifer magazine. Ghosts, vampires, fairies, and other stories. Yes, Blavatsky, she was publishing a lot of ghost stories, horror stories. Some stories, they were really scary, you know, and they would do some very good thrillers nowadays. Her sister, Vera Jelikovsky, she loved writing thriller, horror stories also. So some of the let's say the most let's say psychological challenging stories are written by HPB's sister. Then you have Blavatsky's companion to Pistis Sophia, which is basically G.R.S. Mead. He translated Pistis Sophia and was publishing it for the first time in Lucifer magazine. Afterwards, he published, and Blavatsky was commenting Pistis Sophia. So this is a very interesting work because you have the first version of G.R.S. Mead's translation of Pistis Sophia to English, published in Lucifer magazine, accompanied by HPB's comments. And then you have What is in a Book. What is in a Book is also very interesting volume because Blavatsky, she was doing writing book reviews from any subject you can imagine, fiction, literature in general, and so on. So all the book reviews are there. And there are 2 more books underway, which is What is in a Magazine, which is basically all the magazine reviews written in Lucifer, but those reviews, they are more dedicated to theosophical magazines around the world, like The Path, like The Theosophist, and a magazine they published in Buddhism that they were very enthusiastic about, called Buddhism, and so on. And the next volume also underway is Christianity. Now, me and Juliet, when we started this, now we want also, must say and acknowledge that Ifigenia now, she joined us in the project, and she's compiling the post-Blavatsky years, and this has been a great help, really, because it's a lot of work to do. Now, when we started the project of compiling Lucifer, in the beginning, me and Juliet, we look at the Blavatsky years material and said, well, this is going to be around 20 volumes. But I think 3 days ago, I will stop sharing the image now to share something else. Me and Juliet, we came to realize that the Blavatsky years is going to be, in fact, around 20 volumes. So here you can see our reaction in learning the news. Yeah, well, this is just something funny, you know, because we were so happy thinking that, okay, it's going to be around 20 volumes only, but it's not. It's not 20 volumes. It's much more. No, it's not 12 volumes. It's going to be around 20 volumes. So when we understood that we were closing 10 volumes, then we realized, no, it's not going to be only 12. It's going to be 20 probably. So it's a lot of work to be done yet. Now, let's begin my presentation basically today. We should now look at the historical context within which Madame Blavatsky founded the magazine Lucifer. Because Lucifer is a very challenging name, you know, why she would suddenly decide to be so, you know, defiant and choose such a title for a magazine in the 19th century. To understand why she did that, we have to know what happened to her life until the day she founded the magazine. Of course, we're not going to go back in time. We will begin from the 1884. We are not going to look through all her life. So in 1884, Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Walcott, they were touring in Europe when the scandal caused by Madame Colombo occurred. So in November of 1884, Blavatsky and Walcott returned to Adyar. And Blavatsky, due to the scandal, she became very ill. She was being accused of faking the Mahatma letters, faking about the existence of the Mahatmas, and a number of other accusations that it was raised by the Colomb couple, especially by Madame Colomb. So when Blavatsky learned about it, she was very shaken, and she goes back to India and she became very ill. So in 1885, on 26th of March, Hodgson, you have to know that during that period, when Blavatsky returns to India with Walcott, Hodgson was also in India. He was from the Society for Psychical Research, and he was there to investigate the psychic phenomena related to Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. So in 1885, on the 26th of March, Hodgson leaves. Blavatsky is already ill because of the scandal with Madame Colombo. And Hodgson, he leaves India and returns to Europe. Blavatsky and Colonel Walcott at the time, they had no clue about what Hodgson was planning to write in his report for the Society for Psychical Research. Still in March of 1885, which was a very busy month for Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, the International Council of the TS, she goes to the International Council of the TS and asks permission to take the column to the court for defamation and calumny. However, the International Council of the Theosophical Society did not allow Madame Blavatsky to take the column to court. They thought that this would be a very serious scandal and would put the Mahatmas in a difficult position, and they did not want that to happen. Plus, they considered that Blavatsky was in danger to be imprisoned in India. So after they denied HPB to go to court, she then resigned from her position of correspondent secretary of the Theosophical Society and still in March, on 31 of March, HPB still is very ill. And she's transported aboard of the SS Pehio in a wheelchair. Well, just before leaving India, HPB, she wants to take her servant, helper, Babula, with her. He was someone who Blavatsky, liked very much and wanted very much to accompany her. However, for reasons unknown to me, she wasn't allowed to leave India with Babula. Instead, Olcott suggests that Franz Hartmann should then accompany Blavatsky in her trip. Because she wasn't well. So she's taken from Adyar on a wheelchair. The wheelchair was actually lent to Madame Blavatsky by the magistrates of Madras, who sent the police to help Blavatsky to go to the steamer because she needed help. She couldn't walk. And he sent also the wheelchair. Some years after it was going to appear in a newspaper, Blavatsky comments in one of her comments in Lucifer, in the section going to and fro from Earth, which you will see later on. She comments that the newspapers, they were writing that she left India hidden secretly in the dark of the night. And she then explains to us how she left India and that the police was helping her to leave and to transport her to the ship. And what is the place that Madame Blavatsky decides to go? You see, so Madame Blavatsky, she's hurt. She's in shock. She has been accused by the Colomb of being a liar. She had Hodgson there investigating her. She tries to get support of the International Council of the Theosophical Society to go to court in India. She's not allowed. And she's told that it's better that she leaves India for her safety. And then she's taking a wheelchair for the ship, accompanied by her, very dedicated friend. And I don't think that Franz Hartmann has the place that he should have in the history of the Theosophical Society. He was a very close friend of Madame Blavatsky and a very dedicated friend too, and one of the greatest writers on the category of occultism of the 19th century, of the fin de siècle. So Blavatsky then decides to go to Naples, Italy, and we wonder why she would go to Italy. If you watched my lecture when I was talking about Metrovich and Yuri, you will remember that she has an emotional connection to Italy and she returns to Italy, So in April, after 2 months traveling on the steamship, she arrives on the 23rd of April in Naples and goes to a hotel, and she stays completely alone there. In May and June of the same year, unfortunately, with Blavatsky, I think, is still in Italy, the Hodgson report is published. And the report is accusing Blavatsky of being the greatest charlatan of the 19th century. And that was like, let's say, the cherry on the cake, you know. In June of that same year, Blavatsky writes to synods, still from a hotel in Naples, saying, open quote, here I am, I have no idea where I will go next. What good am I to the cause? Doubted and suspected by all. I would do more good to the cause dying than living. So she's entertaining, you know, some dark thoughts. She's feeling really in a very bad, it's not easy. She was made fun throughout the newspapers all over the world, magazines. And so that's very difficult for anyone. And she was being accused of being a charlatan. And she had to leave the place that she loved dearly, which was Adia, a place she was taught that she was going to stay until the day she died. So in 885, in August of 885, Blavatsky leaves from Naples to Würzburg, still alone. And in October of that year, Countess Wachmaster goes to Würzburg. She wrote, in the last autumn, I left Sweden to spend the winter in a place with a more pleasant weather, knowing that Blavatsky was suffering. Ill and alone in Würzburg, I offered myself to spend some time with her. So in this way, Madame, the Countess joined HPB in Würzburg. So around December, November of that year, Blavatsky is still very, very ill. She begins writing The Secret Doctrine. In 887, Blavatsky moves to London. There, while she was living in London, she changed residency 3 times. She lived some months with Mabel Collins, and then afterwards she moved on, I think, from 2 different places until she started living with Annie Besant. I must say that, as you know, the English tabloids, they are very famous for their gossips. So gossiping is really an art in England, and I don't think there is any other country that can do so good gossiping like the tabloids do in England. You know that very well. You see what happens all the time with the royal family and all that. So, of course, there were a lot of gossips going on about Madame Blavatsky. And, Francesca Arandale wrote a book entitled My Guest, Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, or Madame Blavatsky, My Guest Blavatsky, I think, saying many things during the period Blavatsky lived with her. And one of the commentaries of Francesca Arandale is that it was very difficult to live with Madame Blavatsky because she was smoking a lot. And, she would light her cigarettes and then she would throw the match anywhere, and she needed to be running after HPB so the house would not get on fire. Other comment, which was very denigrating, and I know that this kind of comments, they are difficult to hear, was from Mabel Collins, saying that, living with Madame Blavatsky was very difficult. Her nails were all the time dirty. Mabel Collins was a very fashionable person, always very well dressed. She says, living with Madame Blavatsky was very difficult. Her nails were all the time dirty. Of course, her nails were dirty. She was writing from morning to evening, using ink at the time, so obviously she would not have a manicure, and she would smell terrible because she would be smoking a lot. So so there were this kind of gossip were going around HPB, plus all the scandal going on in the newspapers all over the world, and the accusations that she was a charlatan. That wasn't a very easy period in Madame Blavatsky's life. I would say it was very challenging and difficult for her, and no wonder why her health was deteriorating. So within this general picture, Blavatsky then decides to found Lucifer magazine. At the time, she was still in good terms with Mabel Collins. They were living together. And she invited Mabel Collins to be the co-editor. Now, she had absolutely nothing to lose. She had lost a place she loved that she wanted to stay and she wasn't allowed to, which was in the ADR. She was accused of being the greatest charlatan in the 9th century. So she reached the level that in social terms, she had absolutely nothing to lose. And she said, okay, I'm going to found a magazine and I want the name of the magazine to be Lucifer. Now, so the magazine was founded by Madame Blavatsky. The co-editor was Mabel Collins, and the motto of the magazine was to bring to light the hidden things of darkness, from Corinthians 1:4-5. The first editorial published in Lucifer was entitled What is in a Name, and explained that Lucifer was chosen as a name because it represents the divine spirit who sacrificed himself for humanity, the morning star. To illustrate this, Blavatsky quotes from Revelation, open quote, Jesus have sent me an angel to give you this testimony for the church. I am the root and offspring of David and the bright morning star. You know that the morning star is Lucifer, is Venus. Now, Blavatsky said that Lucifer is a ray of truth about everything hidden by the darkness of prejudice, by social or religious misconceptions, especially for that stupid routine of life. You see, this commentary of her depicts exactly the way that she was feeling when she founded the magazine, especially for that stupid routine of life. By idiotic routine, she meant slavery to the established opinions of the time, conventionalities, social hypocrisy. She was discussing a lot about social hypocrisy in Lucifer because, she was being a victim of that, of gossips, of fake smiles, of social hypocrisy, and so that. For Madame Blavatsky, the truth is a Jew that is found in a great depth. On the surface of this world, all things are weighted in the false scale of costumes. So she's going against the social standards and social practices of her time. So, and she says, the magazine intended to go beyond conventionalism established by opinions, prejudices, and superstitions, And she says that the motto of Lucifer magazine emphasizes this aspect of truth that she wanted so much to work with when she was the editor of Lucifer magazine. In her first editorial, in which she explained what is in a name, she had a great sense of humor. She imagines 5 different people. Each one of them, she approached each one of them, this is in her editorial, What is a Name, to explain them, to tell them that she founded the magazine and that the name of the magazine is Lucifer. So first she approached, I think, a famous journalist, and tells him, oh, we have found a magazine. And the journalist tells her, oh, really? That's fantastic. What a nice thing you have done. What is the name of the magazine? And she tells him, Lucifer. What? He said, what? Yeah, she said, Lucifer. But Lucifer, couldn't you choose another name? She says, no, we want to use Lucifer for the reasons that I just explained to you right now. And then she imagines that she's going to, one of the characters is a socialite. She approaches the socialite and she tells her, oh, we have founded a magazine. And the socialite, smiling, say, oh, what a wonderful thing. You have founded a magazine. What's the name of the magazine? And Blavatsky says, Lucifer. And then the socialite, what? Lucifer, but this is not a name for a magazine. And then Blavatsky explains her what Lucifer means again. And then the socialite tells Blavatsky, look, darling, I'm sorry, I cannot help you to promote your magazine because I have no time to explain to people what Lucifer means every time that I will tell them that you have found a magazine Lucifer. So she was very creative, HPB, and she was creating all these scenarios. I do not know if in fact they were fictitious or if she really experienced such thing with the people that she describes in that first editorial. Now, what is the structure of Lucifer magazine? Oh, this is in random order, all right? So basically the magazine was structured with the opening of the magazine was always with an editorial. You would find a correspondence section. You would find poetries, parables, sorry for the misspelling there, aphorisms, articles on different topics, fiction, satires, horror and ghost stories. Many books have been published in Lucifer in installments. Literature review, she would review mystic, occult, philosophical, fiction, scientific, and any kind of literature you can imagine. Nothing was out of the table. She created at the beginning a column entitled "From the Page of an Unpopular Philosopher," in which she was criticizing a lot all this what she called the social hypocrisy. And they were presenting financial reports. They were publishing the work of the Theosophical Society around the world, the lodge, and they had a section also called column called "Going to and Fro Earth," publishing many subjects. Now, this is the first book we have published, and from in the collection of Lucifer. I'm sorry. So when studying the material of Lucifer and going through all the material, we see that how the work of Blavatsky was holistic, and we'll be discussing about it later on. Now, I have selected 3 poetries to comment on. The first one is "The Lady of Light" by Gerald Massey. This poem was published in the opening of the second issue of Magazine Lucifer, and it says, "Star of the day, star of the night, how large is thy lustre, how bright, Lucifer, Lady of Light." You see that Lucifer here is referred as a feminine, linked to the morning star, Venus, Aphrodite, and all that. The mysterious, ethereal was emphasized in the poetry. For example, the magazine featured 2 poems by Katie Duncan King, the famous materialized spirit of the 1870s. The poem questions, for example, the twilight. It says, "Can I return to my old fate?" A voice whispers, "Never again," as if suggesting Blavatsky's glance at her Orthodox Christian past and the reaffirmation of her new faith, Buddhism, or the abandoning of the spiritual beliefs and the embracing of the ancient wisdom tradition, which was also a phase that Blavatsky went through. This poem emphasizes mysticism and many other topics that you can look at. Now, for example, another important poem that published in Lucifer, it's like the one "A Mother's Sorrow" by Bloomfield Moore, in which it's a protest against injustice committed towards women. At the time in the 19th century, the woman had no right to keep over their offsprings, their children. If they would separate, the children were taken away from them. They had no right to money, to heritage. It was a very complicated situation for women. So all that's emphasized. So the magazine was actually empowering women. As you see, for example, in this very, very long poem of Mary, Mary Vale, called Mary, Mary Vale by Evelyn Pine. This is around a 20, 25 page poem, which towards the end asks, what should a woman Christ do if she come? So you see, was a magazine that was empowering women also, and we see that in the poetries. Now, here is the second volume of the Lucifer collection with all the editorials published. This is around 650 pages. The title given to this volume is the same as the editorial Blavatsky wrote in February of 1989. Then we have chosen this title because Lucifer was, in fact, one of her last songs before she died. In this editorial, she discussed the pandemic, which in 1891 was the cause of her death, and other problems affecting the world. One of those problems was electricity. Yes, the mother of the Theosophical Society was critical of electricity and even quoted an incident in New York about a horse touching an electric wire and dropping dead. Then someone went to help the horse, touch the horse, and drop it dead. And then a third person went to help the person and it received a powerful electrical shock. And she says about this incident, this is an uplifting prospect, and it feels, in fact, like it is one of the last songs from the swan of civilization. So we don't know what was happening when they found electricity. Probably they have loose cables in New York, in London, everywhere, and people, they were dying. Anyway, in this article also, we find Blavatsky criticizing the press. Blavatsky says that the press rushes to publish everything that's evil, but ignore acts of altruism and compassion. Blavatsky shows in this article that she wasn't in friendly terms with the change that were occurring in her lifetime. She was promoting, in fact, another kind of change, namely showing people that there is a spirit and soul. She promoted universal brotherhood and sisterhood, aspiring to free the masses from the conventionalities, social conventionalities, as well as simulations of feelings according to social cultural expectations, showing the importance of seeking the truth and living a spiritual and compassionate life. Lucifer also aimed to show that there is an essential unity underlying all religions and spiritual traditions. Perhaps most importantly, to remind people that there is such a thing as a spirit and soul. As, according to Blavatsky, already in the 19th century, and I'm quoting her, public thought exiled from literature all references to soul, spirit, and the divine plan. Well, Blavatsky always emphasized that true spirituality or religion can only be understood by a deep understanding of the essential, by a deep realization of the essential unity that binds us all. According to her, the mind is linked to both the human and the spiritual soul. When connected to the human soul, it reflects desires, passions, and functions in an egocentric and selfish way. When linked to the spiritual soul, it reflects divine love and spiritual aspirations. In this way, the mind often struggles between the heights of the spiritual soul against the attachments and desires of the human soul. The occultist, said HPB, cannot serve two masters and must inevitably choose to live a spiritual life or a mundane one. Consciousness is then described as polarized between the mundane, worldly, and the spiritual, consequently unable to perceive spiritual truths while functioning within such polarities. For Blavatsky, there are three types of truths. A, absolute, B, sublime and spiritual, and C, worldly truths. For example, the worldly truths for her were linked to social rules and notions of respectability and so on. While the sublime truths could not be reached cannot be really you should read the article that she wrote, the editorial she wrote, entitled "What is Truth?" In that editorial, she says she has a very Platonic approach to the subject, and she says that while we are within the physical body, we cannot know any spiritual truth. We can know only relative truths. And she gives a very beautiful example, probably inspired in Plato's cave. She said, open quote, "The consciousness of man is like a sunflower, yearning for the warmth of the solar light. The plant can only turn towards the sun and turn, following its course, unreachable by light. Its roots remain attached to the ground, and half of its life is spent in darkness." Anyway, the magazine were emphasizing all that. And we see, for example, on the third volume of the Lucifer collection, I had more to say about that subject, but I'm just moving on because I'm not sure how much time I have. Anyway, the third volume of the Lucifer collection, entitled "The Talking Image of Urur," as you see, was a satire written by Franz Hartmann. And the second volume was entitled, the third volume entitled "The Blossom and the Fruit" by Mabel Collins, which is an occult romance published for the first time in Lucifer magazine in 12 installments. The Blossom and the Fruit talks about Fleta, which is a black magician. And apparently Blavatsky influenced the way that the story was concluded, the way that the last, I think, 5 chapters were written. Blavatsky considered literature as the heart and the pulse of the public, and as such gave great importance to works of fiction. According to her, books do not only represent a man, but are the mirror of a multitude of men. She regarded works of fiction not as a mere fantasies, but many of them, they could be an actual prediction of things that could happen in the future. So the way that she sees fiction is very interesting. Now, she published the satire written by Franz Hartmann, and she was criticized by that. Many newspapers, they were criticizing HPB because the satire was making fun of theosophists. It's actually a very funny book, and you should read it, because in this satire, for example, Ratara Morubachi was described as a man with more than 1,000 years old, but looking like he had 35 years old, because every time he was feeling that he was getting old, he would drink the elixir of life, becoming young again. So that probably is an allusion to the Mahashohan. She describes Madame Blavatsky as the talking image of Urur, which only the head could move, but the body could not move. So if anyone would see the image of Urur, would enter the Urur sanctuary, and the body was like there without any possibility of movement. And this was, of course, a satire because Blavatsky was very ill and she put a lot of weight on. She couldn't walk a lot. So, and she could move only her head, he says in the fiction. Anyway, it's a very interesting work to read, to see how they had a sense of humor that we do not see very much between theosophists today. For example, in the satire, the Mahatmas, they are described as a very sensitive. For example, the main character, Pancho, sends a petition. Pancho is considered the theosophical Don Quixote, Pancho, according to Franz Hartmann. So Pancho, he sends a petition addressed to the mysterious brotherhoods of Urur. And the petition was read in Urur, And the sound of their voices floating in astral waves for thousands of miles over the desert in the distant Nilgiris mountains to Kakodumbala, that's a reference to Shambhala, the city of the adepts, reached the astral tympanon of the brothers, and immediately they sent a knockout letter. So they were having fun, you know. Countess Vachmasters is Countess Carnivali, Shambhala is Kakodumbala, Urur, as I said, an allusion to HPB, and so on. Now, what happened, moving forward in time, what happened to Blavatsky and Mabel Collins? In 1887, Blavatsky, in September of 1888, Blavatsky releases a note in Lucifer magazine saying that Mabel Collins is no longer a co-editor of the magazine Lucifer because she was very ill, something like that. But we know that there was a split between the two women, disagreements. Apparently, Mabel Collins, she was having a love affair with two theosophists from the same family, and Blavatsky approached Mabel Collins and told her that's unacceptable. Well, there was entire situation anyway. Eventually, Blavatsky moves from Mabel Collins' house, and the case goes to court. Mabel Collins takes HPB to court for calumny and defamation. HPB expels basically Madame Blavatsky from the Theosophical Society, first from the esoteric circle, and after, I guess, in agreement with all from the Theosophical Society. And then Mabel Collins is very upset and goes to court. And when she's in court, Blavatsky does not show up. She sent, I think, someone representing her with a letter that it was read by Mabel Collins' lawyer, and Mabel Collins immediately stopped the case. We do not know what was written in that letter. So the split between these two women, it was gigantic. Blavatsky called her mystical vampire, and when Blavatsky passed away, Mabel Collins wrote an article for one newsletter of a newspaper for the Sunday Tribune, in which she says the modern witch is dead. In this article, just a few days after Blavatsky died, with big letters, the modern witch is dead. And in this article, she says that Madame Blavatsky was a charlatan and how gullible people can be, and she cannot understand how many people got involved in the network of HPB, the ideas and all that. Very sad what happened between Mabel Collins and Madame Blavatsky, but at the same time, very upsetting also, when someone dies, you go and publish an article like that. So you see there is a lot of anger between the two women. Now, in Lucifer magazine, you will find many articles on many topics. I will mention just one. This is an article entitled On Dynaspheric Force by Lawrence Oliphant. This article says that Jesus came to show people that their natural condition is bisexual. So in the 19th century, in an age that to discuss sexual and gender issues would lead someone to prison, Blavatsky published an article on Lucifer claiming that Jesus came to prove that the natural human condition, sexual human condition of people is bisexual. So she was way ahead of her time, and she was most certainly not afraid of the consequence of what she was publishing. Now, when talking about this is very important, perhaps at least for me and for Juliet also. We talk a lot about it. Which is the method that Blavatsky was using in Lucifer magazine, that we don't see this anywhere in the Theosophical movement today. Okay, they use a methodology that was very holistic, beginning with, for example, their openness. In the magazine Lucifer, they were publishing the correspondence of any person, as long as the person would be not anonymous, and would send a card with their name together with the letter. They would publish it. Even if it was a letter criticizing in the most terrible way you can imagine Madame Blavatsky, she would not censor anything. She would publish and she would reply to them. So there was an openness, and there was an interest into establishing a dialogue with people around. There was a discussion about, ongoing discussion about their dreams, their experiences, their psychic, for example, experiences also. Ghost stories were much published because they believed it was a way to counter, let's say, to show that there is something more than the sense perception can perceive, than what we can see with our eyes. She was looking around. I'm sure it's not fair to say that only Blavatsky, because Lucifer magazine was, there was a group of people working and helping Blavatsky with that magazine. They were looking to all the main publications around the world. For example, the Scientific American, what they were saying, what was the most interesting. It didn't exist at the time. I'm just giving an example so that you can understand. The National Geographic, and so on. These are random examples that I'm giving in case the magazine existed today. So they were looking what those magazines were publishing, the ideas they were discussing, and newspapers also, and the books that were being published, on fiction, on non-fiction, on philosophy, on science, and so on. They were also paying attention to the academic and scholar debates on religion, on philosophy and science, and they were establishing an active and dynamic dialogue with them. So you see that this was happening also in the Theosophist, when Blavatsky, she was the editor together with Olcott. It wasn't happening only on Lucifer, but it continued on Lucifer. So you see that the Theosophists of the 19th century, they were engaged into an active dialogue with what was going on in the world in terms of publication. If they were alive today, they would be engaged also with what was going on in the area of movies and theater and cinema and so on. So she was promoting the search for truth, but she was telling at the same time in the magazine, look, we should search for the truth, but we should understand that while we are immersed within this physical body, we cannot reach the truth nor understand it. She was also, another very interesting work that she was doing is that she was publishing reviews of mystical and theosophical magazines. So every time that theosophical magazine was founded, she would comment the magazine, and she was commenting it monthly and publishing monthly reviews on all this material, something that we do not see in any theosophical publication today. We do not see a dialogue between the different organizations, or we do not know what the magazine of the Theosophical Society in Spain, for example, or in England, or only if we go to visit their website, we will know. But there is not a vehicle today which is gonna show, look, a report, a review of the main and most interesting articles published in different theosophical magazines across the theosophical movement. We don't see anything like that today. So we see this dialogue, this connection between the early theosophies, which they do not exist today. And I do not exactly know why and what has happened that this holistic and open approach of Madame Blavatsky has been transformed into the idea that the work that should be done in relation to Madame Blavatsky is to be studying only what she wrote and teaching only what she wrote. And Blavatsky, if she would not have been cremated, she would have turned in her tomb, seeing how the theosophical movement, in many ways, and we cannot generalize it 100%, is self-centered, became self-centered. So, Madame Blavatsky fought tirelessly against prejudice and personal attacks while in persistent poor health. It took a powerful pandemic to bring her down. In June of 1891, in an editorial word published in Lucifer magazine, Annie Besant announced, open quote, "The founder and chief editor of this magazine has passed into what men call the silent land," as though voices did not ring louder across a grave, and as though the thought of the living were not molded by that of the dead. This announcement was followed by an avalanche of tributes from close friends and people around the world. People who admired the old lady, as she liked to be called, and were shocked and very saddened by her death. The opinion of many was that the world had lost a great light. Well, my opinion is that her light shines brighter after her departure for the silent land. Blavatsky has been compared by some scholars to Martin Luther, the father of Protestantism, and other religious leaders. As for the theosophical movement, I think it's necessary a revision to the way that it has been working and approaching things in order to perhaps to recover and to revive that openness and that spirit, that theosophical spirit, which was so much alive in the 19th century. That's what I had to say. Thank you very much for your attention and patience.